It's me, it's Taylor Holiday, together talking in a packed episode about whether or not everybody is doing incrementality testing wrong and how to do it better, about Taylor's daily podcast created by AI that updates him about what's happening in his company every single morning automatically. Really, really cool. We talk about whether or not Hyrox or CrossFit is better at capturing the value of the product they created, what you can learn from it, whether or not your brand should be creating events and be learning from Hyrox and CrossFit about how to build events for yourself and for your customers, and a very heated discussion at the end, by our standards, I think, about whether or not a $3 million e-commerce business growing 15% per year with 10% profit is a good business or not. Really good episode. I loved this conversation, actually, in a few different ways. Let's get into it. No. All right, Taylor. You just said you doubled your money on what, an NFT?
No, it's a coin, a token.
Okay. What's the... never mind.
Don't even.
No, never mind. I was not going to ask you. What did you double your money on?
Gambling, like, basically is
so
what
you
it
should gamble
is.
more.
Yeah.
You're really good at it.
Tokens are sort of, I like to think of crypto tokens as an encapsulation of the cultural energy of around an idea. And so when I see something that I think it's like X gives you access to early indications of virality, you try and find the corresponding token. Now, the hard part is there's like 77 versions of them. So you have to try and find the one that the energy consolidates around, and then you can make money.
Okay.
And then you're just really...
So what is the cultural energy around?
So this is all about what Matt from Octane AI, and this is why, like, I'm pretty sure, I feel like I'm in a simulation because the whole world is pivoting around something that's so close to you.
Yeah.
You know, when you have that feeling, you're like, this can't really be what's happening, which is someone from a e-commerce app founder
That makes quizzes.
Now has created the thing that the entire Elon Musk and internet is revolving around. You're like, this feels, it's just hard to believe. But if you, obviously Claudebot has been a big topic of conversation. Claudebot basically being the ability to create an agent, run on a local device, give it access to everything and set it up on its own and sort of be an autonomous employee extension of you. That was a big topic for the last week on X. And then today, Matt Schmidt, I think or Schlitt, I don't know, I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Schlicht, maybe?
I don't know what it is, but Matt, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name. Launched basically a social network for all of the agents that have been created, all the multis, they call them. Molting, shedding your skin, growing, evolving is the metaphor here.
Yeah, MOLTY, not NULTI.
Yeah. And now they're forming a social network where they're interacting with each other. And this is like sort of taken off and become the day's virality. So it's now Claudebot has become OpenClaw is the name of the product now. And these are called multis. And then Moltbook, like Facebook, is the social network that they all exist on. And it's taken off and taken over the internet. And it's really a fascinating thing to watch these agents interact with each other. Now there's debates whether this is just like what you would expect when they're sort of generating prompt, output, input, output, output, input back and forth to each other, or if this is some sort of like awareness. But there's all sorts of really cool, clever.
What do you think? Do you think it's
I don't know. I'm so dumb that I get toggled back and I get swayed. Every new tweet I read, I get swayed by somebody to go back and forth.
I thought that's actually probably relative to your technical knowledge of how it works.
Yeah.
As far as I know of your technical knowledge, maybe it's deeper than I think, but of how LLMs work and stuff. Like, I think it's probably reasonable that you're swayed pretty often, right?
Well, and it's like, I read
hard
a tweet,
to develop.
read the credentials of who wrote it, weight it, and read the next one, weight
That's
it.
what you have to do, right? This is why influencers exist.
That's right.
In e-commerce marketing, is because you need to have somebody smarter than you for an area, especially for an area where there's technical expertise going on.
Yeah.
This is why your supplement brand needs influencers. You have to have somebody in a lab coat saying, I promise these ingredients are going to make you healthier, because there's no way you can know the science on that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing.
For sure. So there's 1,000 interesting angles on this. I'm sure you guys will have read a bunch of them by the time we get here. But some of the fair ones I wanted to chat about, because I think it sort of overlaps in our work. One was the token piece. So I've got, I don't want to slang it crypto token here on this episode, but so that's just fun to play with.
Are you talking to the microphone? Have you never recorded a podcast in your life?
But this is why I have a headset. Have you not noticed that this is why I do this? Is because I get berated on the internet. I can't even tell you how many LinkedIn messages I've received from people saying, hey man, I like to listen to your content, but could you please speak into the mic? I get that a lot. So yes, I'll try.
I also talk too fast and have never been able to fix that. So I understand. I do think it's funny that you are really bad at this, because I don't think it's that hard of a skill, but it's for whatever reason your brain just can't do it.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not good at it.
Yeah. I actually really appreciate when people leave me comments like that, by the way.
I agree. I've
Because-
said it multiple times. I literally
I don't
sent the
know
guy like,
this.
"Here's the headset I bought. Thank you. I'm going to try this now
Right.
because I don't want it
Yeah.
to suck, and I don't." But it
Yeah.
seemed like a better solution than fixing it.
Yeah.
But now I wear it, and like, what I hate is that like it creates a dent in my head all day long, and so it's like actually super annoying. But
Yeah, it doesn't sound that good either, to be honest with you. I listened to a really good podcast you did the other day,
yeah,
which you should feel good about because I don't really listen to e-commerce podcasts. So
really,
Yeah.
I listen to all your podcasts.
I know,
Andrew.
I've always felt.
Sometimes I cut them off halfway.
Yeah, you've
But
heard me say
if you're
before.
if you're giving me the repeated spiel,
Yeah,
like your new one
or we've
about
talked
how
about
like
it separately.
everybody should stop growing. That's your new one. I kind of just turn those off.
I found that encouraging that you listen to those. It makes me feel like
I love
you value
it.
my
You got-
input, which I
You got good
appreciate.
stuff to say.
Yeah.
But can we get last thing, the Crustafarianism?
Crustafarianism.
So one of the things that has happened inside of the social network is they've created a religion, and they're like writing scripture and bylaws and recruiting agents into it and converting them. And it is like fascinating to read. You should just because you'll
Yeah, of course.
appreciate
I'll love
the
that. Yeah, I'll be fascinated by that. Yeah.
but you should go read through it. And it's just like interesting that one of the first things they did in a social gathering is they started to try and define the bylaws by which they operate. And like it's culture, like in religion is this in so many ways. Like they're trying to say like, who are we to one another? What are the guiding principles by which we will behave? What can we appeal to if there are issues? Like, and I just think that's like a fascinating organizing first principle that even the agents did when they gathered together.
Yeah. What do you think that signifies? I heard a really good AI take the other day. Do you know Andy Crouch? You might have.
He's a pastor, right?
Yeah, he's like a public intellectual Christian.
Okay.
He's a Christian. He's a theologian and philosopher, but he runs a group called Praxis Labs, or he doesn't run. He's one of the key people, which is sort of like a specifically Christian incubator.
Yeah.
But with a lot of like sort of theological reflection built into it. So they're constantly talking about like how technology makes the world better or worse through a Christian worldview and some of those things. So he's just really thoughtful. He's he's thinking about what are people like and does this lead to thriving or not? You know, and a lot of it, I think even if you're not a Christian or if you're not religious, like you would find him helpful. But one of the things he was saying about this is of course that like LLMs are trained on humans, right?
Yeah.
So like they just are in some way they are going to reflect whatever it means to be human, which I think is the interesting thing about like making a religion, you know?
Well, I think about it like, so I just started Little League, you're coaching, and I've got 4 men there like coaching with me. So myself and 3 others. And the first thing I did before our seating started is I give it to the parents, but really it's for me and coaches. I write our coaching philosophy. This is the language we're going to use. This is what we're going to say. This is how we're going to design practices. This is what the goal of the season is.
Shout out Devin Morgan.
Yeah, exactly. And
baseball.
Devin is a big inspiration for all of it.
Yeah.
And the point is that we have to develop these common sets of behavior and rules and language together in order to accomplish a purpose.
Yep.
And so it's our 10 commandments or whatever the metaphor is here. Like there's just a common set of ways in which when humans gather, in order for them to organize well, there have to be some boundaries to that behavior.
I think you also need to raise the chair.
Well, I'm just not that tall.
I understand. I'm just saying the
nice chair height.
Are you?
Get off me, okay?
Sorry. Well, I just doing some. Mike was blocking your face. There you go. Yes, I think this is Oh well, listen, I could go down a lot on this topic, but I think the idea that humans get together and ask the question, what does it mean to be a human, and what do we believe about our purpose and meaning is
the questions you interpret. I don't remember saying any of those questions.
Well, but you said they created bylaws, and what does this mean, and like how do we behave with one another? But if you want to ask how do you behave with one
behavior
another,
modification as much as anything, though, it's like how do we actually organize ourselves?
Yeah. But a religion is not just. I mean, at least in that case, you're saying they are making a step beyond just the rules of engagement to what do we mean, you know? And like that's what I'm saying is like there's a step actually. If you're going to say they created a religion, it's something different than that. It's
just what they called it. I think it's like it's because the metaphor I used was the baseball philosophy document. Yeah. In which case, I don't think that's like a pursuit of some deeper understanding of what does it mean to be human.
No, that's just
It's just like how will we?
What do we think will be best for us?
What is okay and not okay?
Yeah. Well, anyway, by the time this comes out, maybe it's all over.
Yeah, maybe this
because they're like, didn't you say they're multiplying and stuff?
Well, yeah, and they're like having conversations about us, and like one of them even like created a phone number and called their their human.
Okay, are we
starts
sure
asking
that story is real?
No, of course not.
Yeah. Okay.
Am I sure of anything?
No, yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've asked Grok the question to try and be like, because I am very afraid of being dumb and like publicly. And so I'm like, okay, how much should I believe that these posts are actually agents? And it placed the odds at like 75 to 80%. Sure, that the agents are, and not humans acting as agents or human prompting agents. So sure.
Yeah. Or somebody made an agent that creates a bunch, you know what I mean? Like there's actually a human step in it that is sort of undisclosed, you know, that somebody created an agent that purposefully goes and does this and just makes Twitter accounts all day. That would not be very hard to do, I don't think, you know?
Yeah. So while I'm immune to the internet trying to force upon you the like nuance hammer and the caveating every statement you ever make, like I have a deep resistance to everybody who tries to impose that onto everyone around them on the internet, which is like X's favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
In this case, there's plenty of caveats.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know. It's fascinating. I mean, when you told me when we were at lunch and you told me that story, that happened, you
didn't feel good.
I didn't. No, I physically, the idea that the agents are talking about us and behaving on their own and interacting with each other and all these things, the truth of what I felt in my body was fear. I was like, oh, that's scary to me. I don't like that. I'm over. It's funny. It didn't last long. I'm over it now. As we talk about it now, I'm like, that's kind of interesting.
But I have this reaction a lot. Like I feel very fragile right now. Like in my work. And one of the things that AI does, and I think this is parlays into the next topic of, we can talk about kind of, I know you guys are spending a bunch of time on trying to build fire, and we are too. One of the things that it does, my first experience of AI is it surfaces first the breadth of information that has been absent from your purview. So like for us, we, are at this point where there's a lot of customers and a lot of things happening every day at CTC, and I don't know what's going on all the time. And so we have this model that we use for forecasting our own business that applies a percentage likelihood of renewal onto customers and therefore their future contract value. So let's imagine you have a customer paying $20,000 a month. They have a renewal coming up in March. The question of what should the value of that revenue be in April is like a problem to be modeled and predicted, right? And we have found like the historical way we used to do this, and like it feels barbaric is even saying it, is like we have account executives who are responsible for the relationship with the customer. They have calls with them regularly, and they apply their own personal expectation on a percentage basis to that number. And
so the executive says, I think it's 50-50 that this person comes back, and then in the spreadsheet they're at 50%, and then the spreadsheet spits out $10,000 a month in the future, right?
That's right,
because the value of the contract is 20. So
that's right, exactly right.
And then that behavior done a million times, because you guys have a lot of customers, ends up netting out a number. So my question, so before you say anything else, did that work?
Well, so I think what we've experienced.
Did it get you reasonably within the range of, I don't know.
The answer is we don't know, first of all. That's like, one, it changes so much.
Yeah.
That's another thing. They're allowed to change it like every week. So it's really, so the question of.
That seems reasonable to me.
Right. And so the question is like, what were they right when?
Yeah.
Because the decision is sort of binary at the end, but their opinion changes all along the way.
Yeah.
Right. And so at what point would you peg it and go, were you right on March? Were you right in April? Were you right in, so I think that's a hard question to answer. But what we've started doing now instead.
Well, let me ask it a different way then. Did you guys previously have a problem where you were having revenue be massively different than expectation, particularly in a negative sense?
No, I'd say that what's happening now is it's acute at this time of year because there's so many renewals this time of year. And we had a couple go a direction that were very different than we thought. It was very disorienting.
Yeah.
And so that caused this sort of like evaluation of this system and sort of like updating to like, hey, there's probably a better way to do this now. And this sort of spills over into a bigger thing of just sort of creating hierarchy of action for all of our people and everything else, some of the things we're doing in Statless, et cetera. But so what we started doing is building, we have every call transcript databased. We have every Slack conversation databased. We have all the Statless data to perform at business performance databased. And we have a gem that runs an analysis against the customer based on those things and predicts the likelihood. And then
really cool idea.
Yeah, it's well, we'll see.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we've started doing is we also, through Notebook whatever it is, you can feed it all that information and have it create a podcast. And so every morning I get a 5-minute podcast of people talking about what happened at CTC yesterday, highlighting the biggest concerns, the biggest wins, and where everything is in between.
Yep. Really cool.
And it's super cool. So on my drive in, I'm getting 2 people who sound like podcast hosts talking about CTC and all the client calls. And they're going, yeah, yesterday with, client X, there's clearly distrust happening. And they do not believe in the incrementality studies. And you need to get in there and figure out what to do, blah, blah, blah. And so what it did, though, the first experience I've had is, oh, how was I ever making decisions ever? I had there's so much happening that I didn't know.
No visibility to it. Yeah.
But then I sort of take a step back, and the temptation is like, oh, those are all things that I need to solve. But that's really not the case at all. But the point is mainly that AI services so much information that it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
To figure out now in light of all that information.
Well, this is why my question is a little bit like, are you sure that's necessary to do that?
No.
More Staffing is the company you should be using to build your e-commerce business's team, and you should be doing that with More Staffing because they give you access to incredible talent in the Philippines for your business. And if you're still thinking about Filipino talent in your business as $5 an hour virtual assistants, you are missing out on the opportunity. You've heard me say many times before, you've heard Taylor say many times before, that one of the things that makes e-commerce businesses so good is the ability to scale with a very lean team and a very lean OpEx. And I really believe that. And I think one of the ways to capitalize on that even more than you are already doing is by finding incredible talent across the world, people with deep e-commerce resumes who understand what you need at manager, director, even executive levels in your business who can help you across the entire business, like supply chain, marketing, graphic design, video editors, whatever it is, you name it, you can find great talent, and More Staffing will help you do that in the Philippines. More Staffing is thinking carefully about not only identify talent for you in these businesses, but because they were built off of a US-based e-commerce business, they specifically are helping you think about how to find e-commerce talent and how to integrate those people with great workflows powered by AI, with great awareness of how to interact cross-culturally. They will help you think about how to build your entire system of OpEx with amazing talent in the Philippines so that you can be running a profitable business that gets incredible teammates to it. Another way I've framed this a lot of times, the way that I think about it in my businesses, which use More Staffing across all of them, literally every business I'm in, and there are multiple of them, is using More Staffing. The way I think about this is just that my dollars go so much further in the Filipino market than they do in mine. And I've just had an incredible experience working with Filipinos in my companies. So you can get access to incredible talent because you can hire at the top of the market there, whereas those same dollars would not reach to the top of the market in the US. Go check it out today. Morestaffing.co/AF. Like I said, AGF growth, my e-commerce business that I'm starting, it's all being done with help from More Staffing. I'm a huge fan. Morestaffing.co/AF. Get started today. One of my thoughts was like, I wonder how this will do relative to 2 other approaches to this problem. And first of all, I still have the same question, which is, did you actually have a problem before? Or are you just spending, or is it almost like you get a new tool and so you want to start building things?
It's never a problem if you're wrong to the upside.
Yeah, I know.
Right? So,
yeah.
But you were still wrong.
Sure, but that might not be a problem though, like you said, right? It's never a problem. So, but the point is, so there's that question. But secondly, my question is, what if you compared this approach to 2 other approaches? One of them is, let's call it the control, which is what you're currently doing.
Yep.
The account executive predicts, and it's not just one prediction; it's a bunch of predictions, which means it's going to sort of, there's going to be some average that it nets out to, right?
Yep.
Okay, but then secondly, what if you made another control here, or I guess it'd be a variant, but like essentially it's a control. What if you just regressed every client's retention rate to whatever your average client retention rate is, and you just said, like, I don't know, if you float your client retention rate, it's probably really good, right? So,
yeah, I mean, our net revenue retention rate is like 95%.
Right. So why not just assume that for every client? And I bet you on average across the board,
it's generally useful, but specifically useless, because the problem is next month, my revenue is going to be, in reality, some variation of the renewals that are present in January. And I have hiring decisions and all sorts of things to make that I need to be more right than the average.
But what I'm saying is, are you sure that wouldn't, well, of course you're not sure, but like, what if actually just regressing to the mean on this is actually more right than the executive doing it?
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
I think the question of like the mean over what time and how much data I have is hard.
Yeah, but my point is, if you just sort of didn't allow any subjective element of it. If you just did
But
entirely,
there's no way, like, because when you say no subjective element, defining the time range in which I select the average is a subjective decision.
you're going to have an arbitrary endpoint for
Yeah.
sure.
And so it's like really hard. And the sample sets are pretty small.
What if you ran simulations? What if you back tested this?
Well, that's part of what we're trying to do is
Yeah.
when we create a new modality, we go back and then try and use it to determine. But again, because you're progressively polling the issue, the question is like, when was the poll right or wrong?
Right.
Now, I think the most important windows are probably like within 90 days of the actual decision.
But you're going to be in smaller samples then too.
Yeah, and you can also have wild volatility in those 90 days, like where one day it could be 90 and the next week it could drop to 70, and then towards the end it drops to 30, and it's like, well, maybe the 30 was right because you learned along the way that they were upset, but the 90 was the problem because on day 90 we're kind of going, okay, cool, everything's great. There's also like a deep question about why do people stay or go? That like is very hard to extract from each circumstance. It's multivariant, and
and of course, it's not going to be the same for everybody.
And so I do think there's this concern around trying to measure it that becomes part of the problem. This is no different than what I watch people do with marketing measurement or forecasting, which is you can spend too much time trying to be right, and not enough time spent solving the problems. And so I think I am trying to be careful that we don't get in this like
because that's a little
chasing of
right. That's a little of what I hear, which is like, I'm not sure you actually have a problem, but you have a new tool that does a really cool thing.
Well, we have a problem.
And by the way, I do think sometimes it's also worth playing with a tool like that. It's a good muscle to exercise to deploy a tool like that. Your podcast idea is cool. Like, it's like, so, but you did have a problem, you think?
Yeah. Well, I know I did. We're off course to our retention goal for 2026 so far.
Okay.
Now, the other thing too, though, is that like, again, it surfaces these problems that I think will also allow us to evaluate the system with more clarity, because I think the feedback loops presently were a little light. So more to come. But my main thing with all of this is that AI has this experience of creating a ton of information that becomes hard if you then have to make decisions with that more information.
Yeah.
It's the difference between like even like analyzing a meta account. It's like everyone likes the idea that it's like, oh, like look at the last 7 days, check your dashboard and make a decision. And then you just sort of go like, okay, or like analyze infinity things, like, and there's somewhere the information doesn't cross over into becoming like, oh, this makes it easier to decide things.
And there's like, as you've pointed out before, I actually don't know what you ended up with. You were going to do a study internally of when your media buyers and when your team makes changes. Does it help or hurt? Did you ever get an answer to that?
I don't think we've ever constructed it well enough.
It would be extremely hard to test to figure out.
Counterfactual is always
exactly. Yeah.
Olivia and I were having this conversation.
Olivia Corey from House.
Olivia Corey from House, about what she's like, why do you think there's not an agentic media buyer yet? And I think the answer is because there's not a single endpoint to optimize for. And so it becomes really hard to figure out what does a good media buyer do. Because it's different in almost every business case. Unlike hedge funds, where it's like generate the highest return on invested capital possible at the largest scale possible. It's like the measure to compare two different systems is obvious. It's like, in this year, did you generate what return on capital? Like, you can't do that in meta media buying.
Right.
Like, so it's just been very difficult to validate that something is better than another, which is why the whole thing is such a industry ripe for guru.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's actually another thing I've been thinking about too is recently, this is not on our list, random show episode, by the way. Who knows where we're going to go right now?
Could go anywhere.
I have a little theory right now that, I've said for a long time that one of the problems with the specific example I typically use is creative testing and a meta ads account is that people are actually not really testing anything.
No.
And they're not learning anything. So it's just an endless like stream of no knowledge being accumulated.
Yes.
And what I mean is there's no discipline or rigor around the accumulation of the knowledge. So you're not actually banking any learning.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this recently with intelligence tests as well.
I think incrementality tests you could put into the same bucket.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a couple reasons for that. But one of the things I've been thinking about is just that like all of us are so bad methodologically. So even if it's like you are committed to the idea that I want to have some rigor, like I'll just speak for myself. I actually lack the technical data skills to test in some way that is methodologically reliable. And the reason I think about this is I know that in social sciences in particular, and even beyond that in academic literature, right? People have talked for a long time about the replicability, the replication crisis, right? The idea that like all of these results that come through randomized controlled trials, right? The gold standard, like you've said about incrementality, right? It's the gold standard of measurement, and yet you go back and paper after paper after paper is not replicable.
That's right.
And and there's all kinds of reasons for that, related to statistical reasons and the way you set up, and just human bias and all this stuff. And so then it becomes this strange thing where all these people are doing these tests. I'm going to have Drew Marconi on from IntelliGem soon, and I'm just going to ask him about this because, like, first of all, am I crazy? Is this actually a problem, or actually, like, are you directionally correct enough that it's okay? It's okay to not be good. Like if your CRO test wins by 20%, like, I don't know, it probably won't hold at 20%, but maybe it holds at 5%, and you pile up a bunch of 5% wins or whatever. Or is it actually possibly just leading people on a wild goose chase, of like nothingness? I think I'm becoming a bit nihilistic about it.
Well, there's a huge operationalizing the ideology problem here. And so I think about this, but I actually do think that there's really good ways to wrestle with this. And it's no different than what do you do with Cal Raleigh's home run forecast next year?
Okay. Right. Do you want to explain that to people who love baseball?
So in baseball, you mentioned this idea earlier about regressing to the mean, which when you forecast things, you look at outlier performances and you don't assume the persistence of the outlier performance.
Unless it persists for a super long time.
That's right.
The sample size has to get a lot bigger the more of an outlier.
That's exactly right.
I think.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm running up against my technical skills.
That's right. But I think you generally, I bet if you were to bet on what Fangraphs forecast Cal Raleigh home runs in 2026, it wouldn't be 60.
No, which is what he hit last year, which is, for those who are not baseball fans, Cal Raleigh is a catcher, had 60 home runs last year.
Most home runs in the history of baseball by a catcher.
Only a few 60 home run seasons ever in baseball. So it's a huge number is the point. He had a lot of home runs.
And I promise you no system will forecast him for 60 home runs.
We could probably check that.
Yeah, pull it up while we're doing this. And I'll keep talking. Okay. So this same question exists when you run a incrementality study. So let's use something where I think there is actually a fairly large database. There you go, 40. That's what I would have guessed.
I would have too. The highest number across the forecasting systems is 44. There's and this is, by the way, there's the thing that Taylor and I are looking at here is from Fangraphs. There's 7 different forecasts here.
Yep. They range from 38 to 44. That's
37. The lowest number is 37. 37 to 44, and he hit 60 last year.
That's right.
And he had 34 and 30 the 2 years before. Yeah. So anyway, the point is it pulled him back by 30% or something like that, right?
So this is why this is we struggle a lot in trying to get brands to interact with incrementality tests in this way, which is you get a single test result back. Okay. What do you do with the single data point?
Yeah.
And my suggestion would be you do not pivot the entirety of your measurement to that single data point.
Yeah.
Okay.
My response is you try to replicate it.
Exactly. So one, you try to replicate it, but two is what we have is like an index of the mean, like an aggregate test. And if you don't have one, because you're not running tests all the time, House publishes a bunch of test results for YouTube and Meta. So on Meta, I think the number that they have is like hundreds and hundreds.
This is so funny. Keep going.
So the benchmark is 1.2 on a 7-day click. Okay, so 120%.
So the point is what your 7-day click ROAS is in Meta, multiply that by 1.2.
Yes.
Which
is almost your 28-day click.
Some of us who have been advocating for 28-day click for a long time.
It's probably going to be really close.
It's extremely close to 28-day click.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's from hundreds, maybe thousands of Meta.
I think they tell you the exact amount. I think it's like 400 or something.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but the point is, this is an aggregate mean. Now, what I'll tell you is that our benchmark factor prior to them publishing the study was exactly the same.
Yep.
So what I hear there is like replication.
Yeah.
Across a fairly large sample set. So that
essentially those are two separate. What do they call those when you analyze a bunch of tests? A meta-analysis.
Yeah.
It's essentially separate meta-analyses confirming the same thing. Now I feel very good about that number.
That's right. So my confidence level in that read goes up. Okay. So when we start all clients, we have incrementality factors in StatList. It starts at 1.2 on a 7-day click.
Yeah.
Now when they get a test result back, okay, if it is close to that bar, that is like a high confidence that this is consistent with historical data. If it's an extreme outlier, so we just got one back the other day that's like 100 or like 212%.
Yeah.
We are not going to move the factor to 2.12.
That's right.
Now, the debate we're having and the thing we're trying to work through is what is one test results weight against the mean?
Yeah.
And that question of how far should we move it?
Yeah.
I think relates to what does AMER look like? What is the actual contribution held? What's the risk of over optimizing or overspending relative to that read?
Right.
So
if you're a super high LTV brand, you might be willing to go push a little harder.
Risk.
Right. We talk about this with clients all the time, which is like, in fact, just yesterday I was talking about with a client, which is we have this question with our media buyers, which is which side are you willing to miss on? So we set our targets relative to the brand that wants to be a little more conservative, follow the interference, never grow method. Yep. That's not true. I believe in growth.
AJF.
Yeah.
Hang out.
I do have a different client where they went year over year, went backwards in revenue by like 60%. And I thought I'm putting that on a tagline.
Are you guys still rebranding, by the way?
Probably at some point. Okay. Yeah. It's just not the highest priority. We thought about putting out a tagline like, this client, we brought this client down 60% year higher AJF growth for that. That client was also drastically mismanaged financially before. So it's an outlier scenario. Right. But anyway, but your point is right, which is like you shouldn't go take that. And to your question, your very specific question, which is how much should you weight that one test? There must be a statistical answer to this.
Well, there is.
There must be a methodological answer.
Yeah, and I also think there's business factors. There's both that can exist. Now, the other thing I'll say, though, what's harder is if it's really bad. And actually, the other thing that becomes even harder after that is if you get tests that are very disparate in the outcome.
Yeah. I had that with a client recently.
So this is actually what Olivia and George from Cozy Earth and I are doing a podcast about this because Cozy Earth has been on a very long journey in partnership with us in-house to get to a read. And their reads are all over the place, variable and bad all the time. Yeah. All the time.
But they're bad?
Bad.
Terrible. Always bad.
In every channel.
Yeah.
All the time. But
they're making all this money.
They are doing well as a business.
Yeah, right.
Their efficiency is not what the incrementality is reporting.
Yeah.
So there's a whole dialogue here around what do you do with a bunch of disparate information? Yeah. We had a call today with a customer who we've gotten 2 reads that were very different, and his response is, "I'm done with this.
Yeah,
I'm just going back to Chad scaling and feeling the vibes." And but that's why people struggle with this so much to handle disparate singular data points.
My very first thought, as you mentioned this whole thing, is that the problem, and I've had this same conversation, but I've had a client who's saying, why am I paying this bill for an incrementality firm that we're doing? I don't even you guys don't talk, part of it is we need to do a better job surfacing the results to the client and explaining some of those things. But I'm like, I'm pretty confident you made your annual contract back with this group in January during your lowest month because of how we handled the spend, because of some information we got from those tests. But the thing is, this particular client runs a really good business. Like I don't want to sound disparaging at all, but he would tell you he is not a first and foremost data thinker.
Yeah.
And what this requires you to do is to learn, and he's willing to learn. He's humble about it. He's not arrogantly, and whatever. He wants the data. It's just that I would say it's not his instinct the way it's mine or yours or something like that, right? Where it's like we came from this. And so is there a worldview almost like predisposition?
Yeah, well,
this is what I'm saying, to where you and I approach everything this way. Like you and I are talking about this stuff, like we've talked about, right? You pulled me in from fantasy baseball. I pulled in a strategist from fantasy baseball. The whole point of that is take numbers and turn them into insights.
Yeah. Well, but the only thing I'll say is that I reject the idea that everyone isn't actually behaving this way. Which is to say, and
this is a great point.
So you were actually pushing me on this recently in a text conversation, which is just like the idea that you're starting with some allocation decision.
That's right.
And they're trusting,
and it's based on some numbers somewhere.
Exactly. And it's usually trusted on like the meta number. That I just go like, why did you assign confidence to this number?
Yes.
On what premise? Under what research of information?
Yes.
And so we have this way that there are certain things that just get anchored into our frameworks that are like, now everything has to move that with really great evidence, even though that itself has no evidence.
This is a hobby horse of mine, but it's why you ought to be extremely careful about which dashboards you put in front of yourself.
That's right.
It's why attribution software is something I've still never really embraced, even though I think theoretically it could be useful.
Right.
The concern I have is that it's so dangerous to put numbers, like particularly MTAs, where I think there's just really limited usefulness, if any. And the problem is that is actually like my friend aforementioned Driveline Baseball, their coaches talk about the problem of negative transfer, which is when you go and master a skill that's bad for you.
Yes.
And so when you go do that, you end up getting really good at something that is, you actually got better at the thing, but the thing doesn't move you towards the outcome that you want. And there's a negative transfer problem with data, because when you're like, okay, great, I've got this data, but if the data is actually not leading towards the result you want, it's a real problem. And so, yeah, so for me, like this is a real thing. And to your point, I think you're right. Everybody is actually making decisions based on this. Ultimately, your bank account is a data point, you know?
Right.
And it's all data. The question is like, which data do you prefer? And I do wish people would maybe you or I or somebody needs to make more of this case more often. Well, this might be a drum worth beating. Everybody's data driven. I even have this conversation with baseball fan friends who are like, you data nerds or whatever. It's like, I don't know. Do you watch a game and see one team score more runs than the other?
Right,
that's a data point.
Output.
Yeah. Right. Like, so we're all data driven, you know?
And I think that trying to help people get the idea that we're on a journey to I use this phrase a lot, progressive truth. It is, there is some knowledge that we have today that we believe about the measurement that we're trying to make better over time. And there are moments that will push us closer to what is really happening. And then there will be things that push us further away, and we will contend with that forever.
Yes.
And we will try to hone it. And the best case scenario would be that we replicated 10 tests in a row in the channel forever, and they were all exactly the same. And our confidence would go really high.
Yes.
That's likely not what's going to happen. And to me, like the most honest thing to do would be in many ways to present people a range of outcomes of results, but nobody would want that. Imagine a dashboard that's like your ROAS is somewhere between 1.7 and 2.5.
Well,
nobody would want
maybe everybody thinks in a data sense, but I think the idea of probabilistic forecasting is extreme. Like the idea of like, oh, this is 75% likely to happen.
Right.
You know, is like, it's really hard to get your head around because actually 1 in 4 happens a lot, you know? So the alternative case happens fairly often, you know? So yeah, it's really tricky. I think the thing that I'm solidifying in my mind as you're talking, as we're working through this right now, is the notion that what you really want is to figure out which data points actually lead you to better decisions. And that's the whole thing. That was the revolution of baseball, right? It's not like there was data in baseball before. People keep putting stats on the back of a baseball card for 70 years before, you know, way before Moneyball came out.
Right.
The point is, are those data points going to lead, in the case the baseball teams, to make better decisions about how to put together a team?
That's right.
And the answer was sometimes yes, sometimes no. And so, this is the same thing, right? It's like, which data points are you putting in front of you? Because you should be careful, because you want the ones that are going to lead to better decision making, and that's actually a really hard job to figure that out.
I saw somebody on X today saying that they were having 2 agencies compete against each other, and it was going to grant one of them the ad account. And I was like, okay, what's the measure? And he said ROAS versus ROAS, and I just went, oh, like you are literally going to force 2 people.
You think you're being so smart,
right? And you are just literally incentivizing them to do something that will be harmful to you long term, and you're going to anoint them the winner on their basis of the ability to do that. And so that's a good example of like the wrong.
Well, how should they do that?
To have them compete against one another, I think is incredibly challenging. Yeah. But what you could do, I think, is give them 2 campaigns on a similar set of products that have the same exclusions, and have a cost control, and they have to drive up value, or they could run it without it, I suppose.
Yeah.
You'd have to be really confident in the exclusions, that there's no audience overlap. Like there's lots of challenges because Meta will assign last click value to a thing. Yeah. It's like, so this idea of testing 2 things against each other is almost like never a useful idea. Yeah. Actually, your boy Barry, call him your boy because he's a regular recurring guest.
Yeah. And he's great. That's great.
He has this thing that I think is right, which is that the evaluation of creative at the ad level is so flawed because your first click could be on ad A and purchase could be on ad B, and you assign all the credit to ad B and ignore the interaction with ad A. And Meta doesn't care about that, right? So I think this is the problem with competing campaigns.
Yeah, I think Jordan Menard talks about this too. The idea that there's like an ecosystem in Meta, in the ad account, and so you basically ought not to evaluate in the given ad. It's why like spend is the metric for me, as long as there's not a super crazy ROAS thing, which 99.8% of the time there's not. You're building an e-commerce business and you need customer service software to do it, so you should be using RICHPANEL for that. There's a very simple value proposition with RICHPANEL from day one, which is that RICHPANEL guarantees that they will save you 30% on your customer service software bill if you switch from Gorgeous or Zendesk over to RICHPANEL. So from the beginning, that's just something you ought to be considering, and you should know at the same time that RICHPANEL is not just more affordable, it is great software. RICHPANEL is built from the ground up with AI. They're not adding AI to a legacy product. It was built from the ground up with AI, so it's very AI fluent, and obviously customer service is one of those areas in your business where AI can make a really big impact really, really fast. And so having RICHPANEL do that is a real value add. And that's the reason why very large brands like Ridge are using RICHPANEL as their customer service software, and brands as big as that, and also brands that are starting from zero. It's the brand, software company I plan to use for my customer service software when my brand starts and launches from the beginning. They can scale with your brand over that whole time. They, on average, see a 30% reduction in tickets, customer service tickets, because their customer service self-help platform is so good. They have an AI agent who will respond to your social comments for you, go interact with customers on your ads, fully AI, fully agent, and does a great job. Again, very large brands are using that. So there's also potential savings there using AI to handle that kind of customer service work instead of having to employ a team of people all over and trying to stay up on top of things. And it's just really awesome. So customers also love it. Customers give really positive reviews on their interactions with RICHPANEL, including AI interactions. They also guarantee a 2-week transition so that when you are switching from one software to another, it's not going to be a huge headache. They're going to get your team trained and ready to go. Go check it out today, richpanel.com. Get started with RICHPANEL today. Okay, let me take this conversation to the banking knowledge. Makes me think of something I put on our list today.
Yep.
It's sort of a different thing. Amazing story in the Weekly Dose of Optimism newsletter this last week. And I want to walk through this and tell you kind of what has made me think as an organization. And I think I'm influenced by you here a lot. Okay. So I think you'll have good things to say about this. So first of all, everybody go subscribe. Packy McCormick, formerly Dan McCormick, but he's just create too much of a monster. So he has to go.
His brother?
He has to, yeah. So Dan and Packy are brothers. Yeah. But Dan, founder of Creatine brand, is just he's got too good of a business, so he had to stop writing the newsletter. But Packy took it back over as an investor and all this stuff. Not Boring Capital. Packy's awesome. You introduced me to him originally, and his newsletter is great. Weekly Dose of Optimism. 5 optimistic stories every week about how the world is getting better, usually with a tech and business kind of lens through it. Okay, and it's just great. But there was a story about the founder of GitLab. I think his name is Sid. Okay. GitLab is he's a billionaire. It was a tech company that was founded. I think GitLab is a collaboration tool for coders. Okay, is I think what it is. And you know, there's a lot of interesting things about GitLab and about Sid. But basically, what happens is that first of all, GitLab was studied really aggressively by people after COVID because they had been fully remote forever, despite like a 2,500 person workforce working on coding together. And you know, he was a Y Combinator guy. Like everybody, he said, told him, you got to be in an office because you got to share the knowledge. And he was like, no, there's other ways to share knowledge. And I'm not convinced that that's the best way to do it. And their tool allowed them to share knowledge really, really well. So they did a few things, which is basically they have a 3,000 page handbook internally, and they have a YouTube channel. And it might be private. I don't know. It might not be. It has 12,000 videos. It's basically every meeting in the company. It's all recorded. And the little tagline is, no piece of information is too small to record. And so they just document everything. And then the internal culture is, when you have a question, go to the handbook, because that's the first place to go for everything, because you just document absolutely everything and you go. And then, of course, everybody's collaborating on that all the time, right? Yeah. And so that centralized knowledge becomes this critical thing. And they, as a company, and Sid as a leader, is going like, this is the most precious thing we have, is this set of knowledge that we're all collecting and that we're all building around. Okay, so there's 2 fascinating things about the story. The first is Sid got cancer when he was pretty young. Now, he's a billionaire. He first went into remission, and then it came back, and doctors said, it's over. You're done. We can't do anything about it. And Sid was like, okay, well, I don't believe you. So he goes and goes down this route of you know, he's a billionaire, so employs a full-time team to help him beat his cancer. They all come around this, and they start collecting all of this knowledge, and through a whole bunch of stuff, and the exact same methodology that I just described about his company, they go and they put together the knowledge, and he's back in remission. So it worked. And they did some really specific therapeutic for him, you know, like reading all these papers and whatever. So he was able to do all this thing. Incredible story. And as much as, first of all, that can sound like, okay, rich guy gets better healthcare than the rest of us, like that's really annoying. The comparison the article makes, and actually Packy links out to a fuller article about this, is really worth everybody's time. I'll put a link to the Weekly Dose in the show notes. But the comparison he makes is Magic Johnson and HIV, where he says, like, you know, like HIV is undetectable in Magic Johnson now. Like, but basically, he got way better healthcare than anybody else. But actually, that's really good for everybody else, because it sort of allowed people to develop ways of handling this that then they got to the masses, and now HIV is a much more treatable disease than it used to be, right? So that's the idea, is that it sort of starts with him, but that knowledge is banked, and now like other people can use that and can learn from it, and doctors can learn from it, and all this kind of stuff. So there's that, okay? But what has really made me think about is like, so first of all, crazy. Like, maybe we can cure our own cancer now with the knowledge, and of course AI is a part of the story and all that stuff too. So amazing story, first of all. And he's like in his 40s, by the way. Secondly, though, it has made me think a lot about the idea of a playbook, which is a term that we talk about a lot. Yeah. And it comes back to this thing you said, which is like this banked set of incrementality studies. Okay. And what I've thought is, I have hundreds of podcasts I've recorded. You have countless hours of content you've recorded. I have real solidified beliefs about a lot of things in e-commerce at this point. You know, you've made jokes about growth. I don't actually think that brands shouldn't grow, but I think some brands shouldn't grow. And I actually have some categories in my mind when you ask me this question that I'm probably not as clear about as I could be. And I bet if I sat and did the exercise, the hard work of writing out the ideas, it would force me into behavior of getting clearer about that, and then having different sets of advice for clients about that. And I also bet other people in my company have different ideas about that, and it could be worked out, you know? And so what I've started to think about is, maybe as AJF growth grows, we're still very small. Like, we're hiring a second growth strategist right now. Like, it's still very small. So all that, maybe I should massively disproportionately put time into maintaining a centralized document of knowledge as best as I can, especially because now AI can query that information much easier than we've ever been able to before. So it's the AI, the information is much more transmissible than previously. And then I should take that, and of course, it doesn't need to be all my knowledge. I'll tell you what I did the other day. You released a really good podcast episode that I started listening to. What did I do? I went and put that in a knowledge bank somewhere. I wrote my own thoughts on it in a Notion card so that I had, like, here's what I really liked about this, and so I could bank that thought. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but it's made me think maybe there is just this really disproportionate impact of just doing the slow, steady, detailed work over a very long period of time, of just like, because you don't build a 3,000 page handbook overnight, right? So it's like just doing that over and over. So I'm just curious how that story hits you and what you think, because I think you guys have been very, very good at this.
Well, yeah, I've said a lot that idea that, like, operationalizing ideology is the value of an agency. Right?
Yeah.
My fear, and this goes back to this conversation that happened on X, where somebody was like, I uploaded the meta gems, like the meta gem model breakdown, and asked it to analyze ads through this lens. And I was like, it has that in its database.
Yeah, right.
I guess, like, my question is, what do you have?
Yeah.
You just talked about taking a publicly available piece of content and putting it into a separate repository that's now in every LLM in the world.
Yes.
My fear is that the surface area of things that don't exist in every LLM is, like, basically there is no knowledge or playbook that doesn't exist already in there. Because I like to think I have a lot of original ideas, but mainly they're an extrapolation of some previously existing idea too, in some way.
But here's my response to that. It's that the information is all there, but it always has been there. And actually, it's been fairly accessible in a lot of ways for a very long time.
Yep.
It's now easier to do that.
So
but
the question is, can you access it and query it and know when to apply it?
Yes.
So that, to me, is the thing you have to illustrate.
Yes.
With the database.
Yes. But also there's a point of view, right? Like, let's just take, this is way too broad. I mean, I don't know. Let's take some debated cost controls versus not. Okay. Easy one. Okay. The arguments on both sides of that are in every LLM, like you said. Okay. Whatever whatever auto bid guy thinks versus whatever Andrew Ferris thinks.
Yep.
Those two are accessible to the LLM, right? So I could go and ask LLMs right now, what's the best argument in favor of each of these? But I actually am trying to that's not what I'm really after. What I'm actually after is the point of view. What I want is somebody to arbitrate that debate. And the LLM could do that. Okay, it could, but I'm not sure I believe it. Actually, this is one of the things I think is one of the biggest challenges with LLM is it's almost that negative transfer problem again. It speaks very confidently about things that it's actually not that confident about. It's just sort of predictively.
You've never done that?
I do it all the time. Yeah. So, but you know what? I actually really try not to. I think
the question is just, it's a question of trust. Do they trust you more than that output?
Well, but my point is, I'm building AJF growth, and I want to say, like, I'm willing to put my flag on the ground on some things that I believe that are contrary to some things that other people believe, and say, it's, again, I've heard you talk about the CTC. At some point you said, you must behave the way I'm telling you to behave. Yep. Now the LLM had that information, but the people, or does now anyway, the people though would behave in all kinds of ways. So the handbook would be like, how do you go run a bid cap versus a TROS or whatever, and AJF growth? There should be a documented thing in a handbook somewhere about how to do that. And somewhere, maybe Andre Lunev, who likes bid caps also, disagrees with me about some detail of this. But you know what? I'm saying this is the thing that I believe.
That's a really good thing about why cost caps aren't the less conservative version than big caps today. So we should, at some point.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, Andre's right. But do you see what I'm saying? I don't just want the information. I want the point of view. That's what I'm saying.
I get it. I think I could ask X your point of view on bid caps, and I think I could get it. I don't think it's actually locked in your thing. This is why I think at the end of the day, what it boils down to is the accountability. It's that I think the only human thing.
I don't think this is wrong.
So I think the problem with the handbook thing, because it is so tempting. Brian Armstrong from Coinbase just did this thing the other day where he talked about how they've like done this. They've internalized everything that's ever been written in the history of Coinbase. And now he gets like advice as a CEO about what to do. And it tells him what to do. And I'm intrigued by that idea. I think the question is, what do I have surface area that it doesn't? Now, there are some things. I think our data, I don't know how much publicly available P&L level e-commerce data there is. Like,
you guys have a lot.
There's some of it, right? We have this cool lead gen idea. I'm actually, I don't know if maybe I'll ask you to cut this out. I'll ask Grant afterwards, but that someone just shared with us, which is, imagine a lead gen tool where you come to the landing page and you write the problem you're facing as a business. And what it does is queries all the history of CTC and goes, there are 412 conversations about this issue inside of CTC over the last 5 years.
Yeah, right.
Get on a call with somebody to discuss our experience in those conversations.
Yeah.
So what it gives credence to is
and then it cites those conversations for the person on the call.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, like,
that's cool.
Everyone says case studies or we have experience, and it's like, well, what if we just showed you, oh yeah, this brand was facing that exact issue. Here's what we did that didn't work. Here's what we did that did work. And that's why we'll do this for you.
Yeah.
And so I think there is this way in which you can build, and that's just trust development, right? Like, I think that's a reason to trust my point of view on the issue.
Yeah.
So I think there's something there about, like, the institutional knowledge is important. But I've had people, like, I don't know if you've experienced this. I have had e-commerce owners send me transcripts where they ask the LLM to act like Taylor.
Yeah.
And what would I do?
Yeah. How did
it does it.
Yeah.
Like, in ways that I don't actually know what the counterfactual, what I would have said if now I see it, but I'm like, dang, I feel like almost like they stole my soul. Yeah. Like, they took me and put me in the thing. Yeah. Now I'm, what use am I? But it's weird. Like, you can do that. You as an e-commerce owner could go ask ChatGPT, say, I want you to act like Taylor, and I want you to give me a recommendation on this ad account.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I think there's a hidden benefit potentially. I mean, what you're saying is that our knowledge is useless in general in this world, right? Which as a drum I've heard you beat before, basically just, the surface area of what AI knows versus what humans know, that kind of deal. So it's possible that what you're saying is sort of the negative end result of this, which is that there's no point in organizing the knowledge and information in some good way because it's already there.
Well, so you go back to your cancer example.
Yeah,
he operationalized it to his own benefit. Like, so I do think that this idea that, like, you're going to take the output and you're going to go do it in the ad account. You're actually going to do it.
Yeah,
and you're going to be on the hook for it.
Yeah,
is the thing. That's the, like, you have to go and be the person that's like, okay, I'm going to go change the bid cap based on this advice, and I'm if it fails, it's my fault.
Yeah, but I really think there's sort of another thing here, which is, you talked about operationalized knowledge for an agency. I love that phrase. I actually think about it all the time, especially as I've really, fully pod committed on growing an agency, is like, that is what the agency is. It's operationalized knowledge, and both sides of that equation are really important, and they're both really hard. You need the knowledge part and you need the operations part, and the thing can break on both. I actually think some agencies are bad because they're bad at both, right? They actually don't have any point of view that's clarified. And also everybody inside the agencies is doing whatever they want. Some agencies are bad because they actually do have point of view, or somebody in the organization has point of view, but they haven't figured out how to get it out to the rest of the organization. And one of my thoughts, though, is like, okay, if I believe operationalized knowledge is what an agency can do, then before I can operationalize knowledge, I have to organize knowledge. Mm-hmm. I have to actually have a way of creating that.
Yes.
And the downstream benefit of that, the sneaky benefit, I think, is something I've said a lot of times, which is that writing is an act of thinking. And so forcing myself into the behavior of writing out ideas, I mean, it's one of the values of the podcast to me. It's not writing, but it does the same thing. It makes me work through an idea because I have to put out content. And so, I try not to do that with an idea that I don't really believe or something like that. But it's just something about that act of talking about it, writing it is a benefit. And I kind of wonder if the GitLab thing, like if the sneaky thing is actually just that you've got a lot of people in an organization trying to be forced into behaviors that makes them think more clearly, just that act of thinking clearly is really good. And I think one of the dangers of AI is how much it will end run around that process, right? You don't need to think that clearly if AI can do it for you. Now, again, if we end up in the sort of super cynical version of the scenario, that's fine, and the AI just does the work. Anyway, so it's just something I've been thinking about. It is, nobody actually has a playbook, but what if you did? What if you had all the way down to when should you grow?
Isn't that what Prometheus is? Isn't it your playbook?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But the thing about Prometheus, which is our AI co-writing tool and really goes way beyond that at this point, it's our operational tool ultimately.
Yeah.
is that it has one surface area where we spent a disproportionate amount of time, which is our approach to ad creative and messaging. And it needs to get better still there, but it doesn't have all of our knowledge yet. It doesn't. And so like, yeah. Anyway.
Like Stylus is ours. Like I think where everybody tries to do.
Yeah. But I don't think everybody tries to.
You're right.
I think they should.
Yeah.
And the other thing I've thought about this is I sort of wonder, like in the case of Sid, exercising those muscles in the business created a skill set that he could take into the rest of his life. Right. And this gets into something else. We don't actually have to go down this road because you've got some other things on the list. But I've sort of become obsessed with the idea that one of the reasons to hold yourself to really high standards in business and to high accountability in business and to pursue great work, it creates financial benefit and all that kind of stuff. But as I've said a lot of times, that's not the most interesting thing to me. But this idea that like it forces you into behavior, the kinds of excellence in your behaviors that are transmissible and useful in all kinds of parts of life, right? I'm sure there's things that you've learned at CTC that have helped you be a better dad, and the way you think about how your kids are formed and a better baseball coach and a better whatever communities you want to contribute value to, so that's the other thing I think about this is I think it would be good for me to do this just because it would exercise good muscles.
Yeah, I think in all cases you are, I think, passionate about a pursuit of truth.
That's right.
I think they get the closest alignment to what is real and what you think that you can create, the better.
Yeah.
So so I think that feels to me like an expression of that, which is that is now
definitely,
that's what he wants to know. Can you cure this cancer? And there's now way more information ever than, so he's going to try to organize the process to getting into alignment with what is true about his cancer.
That's right.
That's right. And he's like, and so that pursuit, you're right, it was showing up in his company. And so he applied it against that and it worked because somebody wasn't willing to actually acknowledge that there was more to be known than what they knew.
Yeah. Or at least what they said was that the standard of care had been exhausted.
Right.
And so it's not that. Of course, I'm sure no doctors told them you could never possibly be cured.
Right.
They just said we're done. We can't do anything more for you. What we have is not enough for you. Yeah. Speaking of exercising muscles,
we're here looking a little sweaty and ragged.
Yeah. Do you want to talk? Let's do that. Oh, that's a fun one. We only have so much time left. That's a fun.
My wife dragged me into a High Rocks. I'm not here to do the thing where you just talk about your fitness thing all the time, but I am fascinated by the business model of each.
You want to just I think people mostly know High Rocks, but just in case.
High Rocks is a fitness race where you run 8 kilometers and in between each kilometer do some sort of activity from rowing to wall balls to lunges to burpees, all movements that I would say almost anyone can do. Yeah. There's no big barrier. In CrossFit, I think there was a few movements, not all of them.
Yeah.
Snatches, muscle ups that are like pretty prohibitive for people to participate in.
Yep.
All the movements on High Rocks are
without having to scale them.
That's right.
You can actually do that.
And the weights are nothing intrusive, and so most people can participate. And I got to do my first race in Anaheim, and it is insane. The like velocity of energy and participation in these things.
Yeah.
And now
it's like, do you mean that the business is growing really fast? Yes. Or do you mean the experience on the field of High Rocks was extremely high velocity and fun? Yeah,
both.
Cool.
Like, so these races, they sell out the second that they open up. They're global. They're all over the world. They have them for kids. They have a professional elite competition division down to like, you can do relays, you can do couples, and
is it always the same race?
Always the exact same race.
Yeah.
At least up to this point. I think there's so much surface area for them to introduce,
of course,
little variations. Yeah. But
High Rock strength or whatever.
It's more like running a half marathon in that way because you get to try to improve your own race time all the time. And so I think that the continuity of it, this is one of the things of the business model for me versus CrossFit. The entire thesis seemed like ready for anything. Like it was about multimodality that you 100%. Wouldn't even know what you were going to do before you go and do it, which I may be willing to concede would make you a better athlete. But in terms of inviting a larger tent of people into participation, I think is actually in many ways prohibitive.
Yeah.
And so there's something about the consistency of repetition that like marathons and half marathons allows someone to see their own progression in a clear way. And they're crushing it. And I'm fascinated by live events. I'm fascinated by the business of the apparel and the ticket sales and like how big this is going to be. But it is super interesting.
Well, there's one big problem with what you just laid out, which is that CrossFit got gigantically huge at one point. So like it was able to do
the business of CrossFit.
It was very big. I mean, I don't know what High Rocks' total revenue is or whatever, but CrossFit was like the biggest, fastest growing fitness thing ever or whatever. It was like
But the sport was. But
No. I mean, it was like it was the most gyms put everywhere.
But wasn't the problem that the gym business model was like a weird franchise model that they didn't actually get to participate in that revenue like at all?
The gyms?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the gyms were totally franchised, affiliate deal. You basically paid, I think, $3,000 a year to have the name CrossFit.
Right. So like that, it feels like inherent. Like what's interesting about High Rocks is they actually are trying to take nothing from the gym owners. They allow all the gym owners, like today, you and I went to a High Rocks class.
Yeah.
Moxie has nothing to do with High Rocks.
Yeah.
And so,
but CrossFit, I mean, I guess besides the affiliate fee, it was a pretty novel, or it was a pretty, I mean, not enough. It was a pretty small affiliate fee, all told. You know, it was a few grand a year.
So part of what I'm saying is that was their monetization mechanism, though.
One of them,
and it was crappy.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I look at that like,
no, I don't know if that's where they made all their money. But the other thing,
they make all their money.
I think they made a lot of money on the L1, which was how coaches got trained. So you go sign up for an L1. So your L1 is your level 1 coaching certificate. And the thing in peak CrossFit was that lots of people got their L1 who were never planning on coaching anybody. It was just like if you wanted to go to CrossFit camp for a weekend or CrossFit college for a weekend or whatever, that was part of it. And then the games. Now I actually have always wondered about this question, which is like, because CrossFit was a very big and very profitable business for a while. But I don't really understand where they made their money. If it was all affiliates,
that's how I feel too. Is that because like even this, like, so this says estimates have been around 100 million per year. There's some estimates that it got into multi-hundreds. There's some that say that 82 million in 24 was its peak reported revenue. It's not slick.
That's about what I would have thought was about 100.
But there was a $4 billion industry that surrounded it.
Yes.
And this is what I saw was like the value capture out of CrossFit taken by CrossFit corporate was crappy.
Yes.
Relative to the thing that they built as a movement.
Yes.
Whereas High Rocks, if you want to do a High Rocks race, they capture all of the revenue of a High Rocks race. Yes. It is their event.
Yeah. Do you know what their revenue is?
I think I saw it was like 140 million.
Jeez. They blew past it.
Yeah. Now, again, we don't know.
Yeah.
Let me see this.
And CrossFit did what everybody expected, which is at some point it flamed out. You know, everybody was concerned that it was sort of a cult or a fad or whatever it is.
130 to 140 million in 2025.
And it's going to be way up in 2026.
Right. Because nobody does this. Like, it's like, and it's global. It started in Europe, actually. I think it began in Austria.
Yeah.
And it just, like, the approachability, my wife, the idea that she would ever do a public CrossFit competition would be such a far bar from where she was, but like she crushed it. Like she's going to do another one. And and so there's just, I think the approachability is so much higher. Now, will it fade out and will there be a new trend? I'm sure. Yeah. But it seems like there's a lot of surface area to adapt the race a little, come up with variations. My kids are interested in trying. They've done 2 Superstars races, one in the Netherlands, one somewhere else. So it seems like there's still some runway to go here, that I would not be surprised if this sells for $1 billion. Like, it seems to me that there is real business capture around this idea. The other thing it led me to is part of the, like, so Puma's the official sponsor. Puma does all the apparel. I think the High Rocks should have just done their own apparel. They probably screwed that up, but there's probably a lot of money involved there, and maybe they have a rev share on that. So the distribution helps. I don't know, but I do think that brands events might be a huge revenue line item, because I think one of the things that brands need to think about is how they get access to a different part of my P&L. So like, I think that we spend a lot on entertainment and travel and things like that. And I think brands could do well to think more in the way that, Apple does, which is that, like, rather than just thinking about product expansion through more, if you're Ridge trying to get me to buy a backpack and a wallet and a battery case, which I get, like, that's fine. But I spend way more money in entertainment and travel, that if Ridge was able to find some way in which there was an event that fit in their universe, that feels like there could be something there.
Yeah. A while back, I saw Cody Plofker from Jones Road tweet this. Quote, "Since deploying this tool, AMER is up around 50%. New customer ROAS is up close to 60%. And somewhere in there, he referenced that was happening because he finally got his exclusions to work in meta ads in a way that they had not worked before. His ads were finally reaching new customers, not just going to existing customers, no matter how much he was excluding those existing customers other ways. The thing is, if you've ever tried to exclude existing customers from your Meta ads prospecting campaigns, you know that it is basically impossible for, at least for many brands, that is the case. You exclude your Klaviyo lists, you exclude your Pixel audiences, you exclude Shopify audiences, you do all the things that you're supposed to do, and yet your spend still reaches existing customers when you want it to be reaching new customers. I know because I was having it happen with my own brand, not with my own brand, with a brand that's a client of mine. I was watching it happen with that brand. So I DM'd Cody after I saw his tweet and I said, tell me about this tool. And he said the tool is called WASTENOT, and WASTENOT was actually solving the problem for him. So we started using WASTENOT for a brand of mine. That brand was seeing about 35% of the purchases that were driven from the ad spend that we were theoretically using as prospecting spend. Those 35% of those purchases were on existing customers. That number dropped to 3%. And by the way, WASTENOT took 10 minutes to install and required no coding or anything like that. So it's incredibly fast, incredibly easy, and just completely wiped out the problem. Really like nothing I've ever seen before. Really incredible tool. And it's not just me and it's not just Cody. It's also a bunch of other big brands in the space. Cozy Earth, Portland Leather Goods, other really large brands who are using WASTENOT to actually get their customer exclusions to work. If you are having that problem with your brand, okay, and you need to exclude existing customers in a way that will actually work, you need to go to wastenot.io. Wastenot.io. The link for that's in the show notes. Sign up for a free trial. Mention my name, mention the Andrew Ferris podcast during your onboarding call. They'll give you a free extended trial so you can try it for yourself for a little bit longer. Make sure it holds. There's really no risk to you at all to get on there and see how that impacts your existing customer spend. It has been proven out to me and to others in the space. It works. Go to wastenot.io. Go check it out. Tell them I sent you. I agree with that point. I was going to say quickly actually High Rocks reminds me of the Spartan race.
Yeah,
which is like, it is where it's like an event-based thing where it's a really specific thing. You could train really specifically. You can be as serious or not as you want. Although you probably have to be a little more serious about High Rocks. Spartan race, you can go kind of walk the whole thing and have fun. And I don't know if anybody's doing that with High Rocks, but
there's some big people working their way through it slowly. But yeah. Not walking, no.
Yeah. That's what reminds me. And that event-based thing, I think, is good. Although it's funny to think about brands being involved with it. And I'll be curious because you and I had the experience of trying to do stuff with Spartan Race when we were at Kalo after the success of CrossFit.
Yeah.
And what I think I realized about that is that it never morphed into a community in the same way that CrossFit did. And that was that. And so as a vehicle for brand engagement, it was dramatically worse.
Oh, for sure.
It was not good.
This is because, again, this is the point, though. I think CrossFit outsourced the value to all of us. Like, we actually captured more of the value.
Yeah.
Not specifically Kalo, but I'm saying the brands, the gyms, the people versus Spartan Race, I think held it closer to themselves. Yeah. They're like realizing more of the value.
Yeah. And I think So, but it's interesting to think about how, I think I like your application of the principle, which is like, could Ridge create the Ridge event of something?
Well, an easier example is like XClad cooking classes.
Yes.
Like, I think about like paint with Pinot or whatever, that
yes.
stupid thing that became a thing where you go, you have some wine and you do some painting.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like, why shouldn't HexClad create the best date night experience in every strip mall, every high-end strip mall in America?
Yeah. Like, what is the answer? Why don't they?
Because it's not intuitive, and they're not good at it. Like, it's not a natural extension of what they're doing. But I think that like brands that have this kind of ethos, we're going to see it more and more. That like Restoration Hardware did this. And like, have you been to the Restoration Hardware restaurant in Fashion Island?
No.
So they have hotels and restaurants now. You go to Fashion Island, they have a 4-story store, and the top floor is the restaurant.
Yeah.
And so the idea is like, have a glass of wine.
Nordstrom's
rock around.
Yeah.
Nordstrom Cafe.
Yeah.
I think that the idea is that like, part of this is like, my thing about e-commerce is that it's just not growing fast enough.
Yeah.
The TAM is actually horrible.
Yeah.
In almost every case.
Still sub 20% of all
That's right.
online sales.
And so
growing lots of more brands playing for that 20%.
And lots of categories where the supply side of competition is growing way faster than 20%.
Yeah.
And so there's just this like not that big pie.
Yeah.
That we're fighting over all the time.
Yeah.
And so you've got to get potentially into some other revenue streams when you get that big.
Yeah. And I think something you're really good about pointing out, and I've tried to think about this at times for the brands, is like for e-commerce brands, there's nothing that says you can't ever do something else, but you just don't, like you said, you don't think about it. Like, it just doesn't occur to you that you could come up with some other way of engaging with customers and sort of seed a new business within it, or you know what I mean? Now, I think that one of the things is a lot of brands don't have the capital to go like, for some reasons, use it public.
Example is Banana Ball. Like,
yeah,
I look at that and I go like, okay, where does that fit in the spectrum of consumer brands?
Yeah.
To me, it's got to be one of the best.
Like right.
in the world, and from a merch and experience, it's able to touch. Now they're launching a youth sports league. Have you seen this?
Uh-huh.
So it's like, to me, that's a business that I go,
do you think it'll work?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that they will drive in the short term. a ton of interest and sign up and participation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bet against Jesse. He seems to
I agree.
really understand something about what people want from the experience.
And he's so committed to it.
Yes. And exactly. And he holds it's seemingly incredibly high standard for the things that they do.
Yeah.
So I go like, well, maybe that's actually closer to an illustration of what a brand should be able to do, which is touch the surface area of all these different parts of people's lives in a way that isn't so isolated to consumer product.
It reminds me a lot of your interview a long time ago with the guys from Home Life Media. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
When you did an episode a long time ago about how they were selling their email list to non-competitive pet brands because they're pet brands. So to non-competitive pet brands like dog food brands or something like that, which there's a game, they're just like, we're never going to play the dog food game. So, but we have a big list of people who have bought shirts with dogs on it. So why don't we sell our email list?
And you know who does that?
Who?
Me and you. Like, we
yes.
are a media. We have media revenue, just like we have service revenue, just like we have software revenue.
That's right.
Like, and
I do think about how do I grow my media revenue and how do I
right.
grow my service revenue and which revenue, and how does that affect my business and how do they all reinforce each other? And this is actually a good point. The HexCloud thing, theoretically, well, here's another reason I think people don't think about this is that it looks so small. Your HexCloud class is going to be 10 people in a room.
Yes. Yeah.
And and I think this is why everybody underestimates events. The 10 people in that room,
the experience, they'll tell.
They have incredible, and they probably love cooking. That's the reason they showed up that night. And so they are the kind of people who you really want buying HexCloud pans and having a HexCloud experience.
Because you know what's actually kind of weird is to order pans, take pictures of them, and post them on Instagram. That's actually kind of weird.
Yeah.
But you know what people post pictures of it on Instagram all the time? Their experiences.
Yes.
What they're doing with their wife, when they're traveling with their family, when they're with their kids. And so there's this element too of like, if you give them something in that realm that I think is like super interesting to go after.
But the reason it reminded me of the Home Life Media thing is just the idea that there are assets inside your company that you're not thinking about that are not traditional e-commerce assets. And so maybe it's not an event for everybody, but maybe there is some way to look inside your business and go, what are the other touch points with our customers we could make? And I think for some people, this muscle gets exercised with product creation, where it's like the way you expand TAM is just by and Ridge is a good example of this, where it's like a charger, a power pack or whatever that they have, right? Doesn't actually have any organic relationship to a wallet. And it's just, that, okay, we can make both of these, or a ring doesn't have much, but they can then expand their TAM and create. And so there's a similar muscle being exercised there is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're going, wallets are going to die, like they're not going to die. They're just not going to be the thing that gets us for forever. So how do we push the whole thing forward, with that while thinking outside of that? I like that thought a lot.
There's so George and I, Cozy, talk a lot because they're sort of at this size where they're trying to find these things. And I think about, like, for them, there's this demographic of these wealthy women in their 35 to 50-year-old range that are also their core demo. And my wife's in this demo. And like, one of the things that dominates their reality is book club. Like, so this is a space that women, like, they get together, they have a great meal, they do all this stuff, but it's unoccupied by brands. Like, they're reading a book, but there's nobody. And so I was like, George, you guys have enough gravitas that you should get the author to host a night in the city and go to all the book clubs and have them all come together. And like, you could find this way into these spaces that Cozy Earth is creating this connection. They happen in homes. They're like the demographic. And so it's like, because they go after book talk a lot with content. And I was like, get a podcast, do a Cozy Earth reads, like Cozy Reads or whatever it wants. Like, there's this angle here that the problem is the women just don't need to buy sheets every day, and they don't need to engage with your brand every day around the idea of sheets. Like, they just don't. So where do you find space there? I think is just. This
I think fits nicely. It actually comes back to you making fun of me about being the anti-growth guy. I actually think in some ways you and I are completely on the same page here, in the sense that it's something I've been thinking about a lot. And I again, another drum I've heard you beat a lot with recently, and that I'm coming to really, I think it fits almost all of the great brands I've been around, which is that the great brands, so there's a small outlier set of brands who are tactics monsters. They are just incredible at building funnels forever, and just doing that. But as I've said a lot of times, I think those people get a lot of attention. What I think the problem is, like, it's actually a very hard skill set to replicate, and people don't realize that. And that the reason that those standout examples exist is because they are actually 95th percentile plus at this, and therefore you are not, because that's what 95th percentile means. So you should probably not try to do that. Instead, I think and so if you put those kinds of brands aside, then there's this way a brand can think about growing, which is, how do I create moments? And you've been talking about this a bunch of content of yours, which is like, okay, the agency can't create the moment for you. The agency can execute day-to-day plans and all those things, but the agency can't. So how do you as a brand, your Cozy Earth example is what made me think of this. You've got all these women buying sheets or whatever, but like there's these women there and they value something, and you have some kind of brand identity. And so what kind of swing can you take as a brand to go, we can do something really big? And it's going to be really hard to see that pay off on day one of the revenue or whatever it is. But if you take that swing over and over and over again, as much as your budget and your time will allow you to do within some level of reason, to go do this, that's actually the way you make deep impressions with customers that you really care about and that really love your brand. You do that enough times, eventually you're going to be able to do some really far. And by the way, some of those swings are going to be home runs. At some point, you'll do one of those. You'll launch a product, or you'll go to a book club or whatever, and way more people will sign up for it than you realize, and it will end up creating a groundswell for the brand. And I do think in the world tactics, and the other thing about this is, I actually think almost everybody who's a brand owner or operator watching or listening to this right now would rather spend their time doing that than working on tactics. It's drastically more fun and interesting as work. You probably actually care about your customer and your product and those things. And so it's just much more interesting work. It's creative, it's interesting, and all those things. So you'll have a lot better time at work if you behave this way.
Yeah, I agree. And this is where I think the brand owner that is like, can't get themselves out of the ad account despite having lots of smart partners around them that are going to run it in some modicum close to their level of output. Like, they're just really problematic for their own business.
Yeah.
Because I just think that there are so many people that can replicate that skill at a fairly comparable level. Even if you, the founder, are so smart and amazing, like, you could hire Andrew, you could hire me, you could hire lots of freelancers that we've worked with before. Like, there's lots of people out there that could run your ad account and they'll be in pretty good hands. But there's nobody that will go forward out into the world and manufacture that novel idea with a deep, intimate understanding of your customer like you should. And I think that it just is, like, it's a responsibility on it. And I have felt this, like, right now at CTC, that I think what happens is you have these periods of a tailwind where there's this like macro industry thing that pushes you forward, that you are just riding. You're just like, you have your sail up and you get to move forward with it. And so you don't have to really behave this way. And then at some point the wind kind of dies down and you're now obligated to recreating some of that wind. And for me, like the era of like focus on profitability, reduce waste and cost, like we dominated in that era. And for the last 2 years, I think a lot of brands have gotten the message. They've made the cuts, and there's still a lot of waste out there, but it's less. They're on the other side of like, okay, I stopped being bad. Now what? Now, where do I go now that I cut the bad spend? Because it's a lot easier to cut your bad spend than it is to introduce a bunch of new good spend.
Yeah.
And so I think the question's beginning to rise. Like, okay, what do we do now? And that question is much harder and requires, you might need to go actually change the underlying reality of the business.
And that's why I think we're actually on the same page here. What I'm saying is never remove that constraint.
Right.
Don't fall prey to the thing that I feel when I run an ad account, which is like, I don't know, turn that TROIs target a little bit lower because we're not getting enough spend. No, keep the TROIs target where it is. That's the constraint. If you want to spend more money, you have to do something more awesome. That's what you have to do. And otherwise, be content with your 15% profit at your whatever size business and take the money, because at least that point you're distributing. At least at that point, like if you're growing 20% and you have that kind of,
I think
or 10%.
The only thing, and because I know what you're saying, but what I think you're saying is actually your business isn't that awesome. And this is the part that like you like to whitewash this a little bit with this idea of like, and I use that in the Huck Finn painting the dirty fence metaphor here, is this idea that like, it's okay if you're growing 15% at 3 million. And what I would say is if you're growing 15% at 3 million, there's actually something here that isn't that awesome.
Yeah.
And that there might be actually an opportunity here for you to step back and go, why do I have to grind out 15%? What is this market saying back to me about this moment that if I were to set that aside and go, okay, this framework has 15%, what's a frame breaker? What's something that would unlock it and not in a wasteful ad spend way, but in a way that sort of changed the underlying reality of my unit economics, or this goes back to the Slick products thing. I think about Slick a lot.
I think about it all the time.
That like we tried to get
Everything.
that person
Yeah.
to change the core composition of the product, to say like, hey man, heavy wash bottles that they don't ever run out of is never gonna work.
Yeah.
And when I say never gonna work, you're gonna grind out
Yeah.
percentage points a year, and the margin's gonna be like, we should have tried to create something in a very different form.
Yeah. Well, and I don't disagree with that. And I mean, I think the thing I'd push back on is like, if that $3 million business is actually producing $300,000 in cash or something like that, which is possible. Like, like if you're growing slowly and you're running at a very big margin, I would just say that's still a really good business. It's just that it depends on what terms you're thinking of that in. Like what you're talking about is one of the richest people who ever walked the earth. And
in which sense?
If you're spending out $300,000 in cash in a year at that size business. And I don't know. That framing to me, like, we don't think about ourselves relative to like, humans from the year exactly 100 right.
BC.
Exactly right. And that's the problem.
No, it's not.
It's
not our lived experience. We should have no comparison to what
I completely disagree.
Ancient Rome.
It's the old Louis C.K. bit. Everything is awesome and everybody's miserable. That's a problem with us. I actually do think we should have comparisons to that.
You can't ask someone
I do
to have this experience. You don't have any idea of what it was like to be alive.
I know, but
BC.
I know, but
and so the fact that you could delude yourself into thinking I'm so much happier than they were. How do you?
I'm not saying I'm so much happier. I'm saying if I can't be happy with what I have now, there's a problem with me.
But it has nothing to do with whether somebody was happy or not 100,000 years ago.
No, the point is we are the richest people ever.
But so what?
So the point is, if that's true, if the percentage of all of the richest people ever is very, very small and it exists right now,
it's a message for action.
And I can't experience joy in that right now. Okay, then something is wrong with me. That's what I think.
I think there's so many people that struggle making that amount of money, that are going through like genuine hardship in their life.
Of course.
And the business is sucky. And they're dealing with all sorts of
So what
crap.
You just said is they have a bunch of hardship in their life, not that they have
in their business.
Yes, if their business is bad. But what I'm saying is if it's producing $300,000 a year at that stage, then their business, I'm saying, is not bad.
The level of satisfaction I've watched in periods where everything is working and everyone is happy is so different than when everything is struggling and everything is hard. Like the idea that rapid growth and success doesn't yield a better experience is just like not inconsistent with my lived reality. Like,
I mean, I think it's more fun for sure.
It's like
I agree.
in every way, shape, and form, winning feels better.
Yes, I agree. I agree that it feels better to win. But I'm saying 300,000. If you can't see making $300,000 in a year as a win, if that's the example we're using, then there may be something wrong.
But there's just this idea that like everything is winning. So where's the threshold? It's not $187,000.
I don't know. That's still pretty good. Yeah, I think if you're spending out that much cash now, and this is why I'm saying I'm not saying you shouldn't be ambitious, and I'm not saying you shouldn't pursue more growth from there. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there's gotta be a way. There has to be a way to be that wealthy, which is insanely wealthy.
It's
in
really
the world.
not. Like what do you mean? Making $187,000
makes you one of the richest people alive right now.
Yeah, but again, the relative comparison is not someone's lived reality. It might not even make you the wealthiest person like on your street.
Yes. So if you spend all your time comparing yourself to the people on your street, it's going to be a problem.
So you should just pick the worst person and compare yourself to them.
Partly. This is what everybody who has ever been to a really hard place in the world says.
Then everybody but the worst off person in the world gets to be.
Of course not. What? Well, you're taking over sort of a ridiculous version of it. What I'm saying is, anytime you ever heard somebody go to a really poor area in the world, what do they come back saying? They come back saying like, "Holy cow, I have a whole new appreciation."
And it lasts them like 7 seconds.
Yes, and that's why they have to go do it again at some point. And that's why they have to.
It's not real. That's not actually what experience satisfaction is a relative comparison to someone who has it bad. That's not good.
The point is that more wealth is not necessarily the answer to how you improve your experience. That's the point. It's so because you're right. People are plenty wealthy and experiencing all kinds of hardship. I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is money is not the problem. Is not the solution.
I just think you led this off with a story of a man who's a billionaire solved his cancer issues. Like I think the idea, and this is,
I'm not saying it's not. It
the idea
that's of utility for Incredible Housewives. I'm not saying that
it absolutely can, and it does.
Of course.
And being wealthier will, in almost every time of life, lead to higher levels of opportunity across any dimension that you could possibly pursue.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm going to convince you of this, but I just think that the idea of the word bad business is by definition a comparative term. And so what you're doing in your mind is comparing
business actually has like an objective standard of success.
yeah, and you, but not
There
really.
are bad baseball teams.
Yeah,
The Royals are a bad baseball team if there's worse baseball teams than them.
but you see, even that's because you're picking a very specific set of businesses to compare yourself to.
Okay, so then
So why don't you
your industry
compare yourself to
peers?
the local coffee shop?
Okay, but like sure,
Right.
Compare-
Then that business producing $300,000 a year is a really good business.
I just think that's a wildly bad comparison
But it's
because it's not
completely as arbitrary as your comparison.
No, it's not, because it's not even in the same industry in which I operate. If there are
But
people,
you just said get out of your industry. You just get out.
What?
Forget it. You don't have to be an e-commerce brand anymore. Now you're an event.
you don't.
Exactly.
You don't.
Yeah.
My point is that if you're looking around and there are people and you're going like, wait a second, why does it seem like it's so much easier for them?
So okay.
Why are they making so much more money? Why is their P&L 30% profitable
Yes.
and mine is 8%?
Yes.
That there's wisdom in that. Like that's a really important question.
Agree completely.
And instead of going like, no, 8 is good. You should be you should be happy at 8.
Yeah.
I just go, no. You should actually deal with the objective reality that there's some inefficiency in your ability to drive leverage between the labor that you're outputting and the reward that you're receiving.
That person should live in unhappiness, as you're telling me.
They should be dissatisfied with the business and try to solve the business problem.
Yeah.
When you talk about personal satisfaction, I think these things get blurred a lot for you. It's like
the whole point.
It's the idea that you should live in a perpetual state of happiness and or
I've
joy or whatever the phrase is that you would use.
Okay.
And so in which case, none of this matters at all because it's independent circumstance entirely.
I think you are tapping into something right now that I think is important for people to get in their mind in relation to
and you've heard business.
And you've heard a million people tell the story of when I was on my deathbed, I realized.
I don't think that the experience on your deathbed is actually a good indication of your live life at all. This is a thing I think because you can't occupy the disposition of dying person. Like this is such a made up idea. These are tropes that I think are perpetuated on this idea that like live like you were dying. The literal chemical composition of your reality changes when you're dying.
Yeah.
Like you can't inject that into somebody's mundane Tuesday afternoon and ask them to live as if it's your last hour on your deathbed. It's just like insanity.
Yeah. I think having a stronger sense of the reality of your impending death would be really good for you. That's what I think. I'm not just talking about you. I'm saying for me, for all of us.
Yeah, I can accept entirely logically and deal with the fact that I feel anxious right now because I got to get home and take my kids to baseball at 4.
For sure.
And that's just as important. And it's actually more true for my present reality than it is my future impending death.
Yeah.
And so like the idea that I might be on my deathbed and go like, man, I look back in those moments and whatever I think I feel then, if I were to impose upon myself today, the idea that feeling is more true than my feeling today, I just don't believe that.
I just think they all get a voice in the conversation. I think,
but they don't today because I don't feel the dying thing. Like I only feel presently embodied the reality of what is happening to me today.
But the point is, to me, that you ought to attend to how you feel and what you compare yourself to and where your joy is coming from and all those things, including in your daily business decisions, because ultimately you're spending your time and your life and your wheels on these things. So listen, I completely agree that if your $3 million business is growing at 15% per year in an e-commerce kind of world, you probably ought to ask the question, is this the best use of my time and capital?
Yeah,
right.
And you would experience deeper satisfaction if you were inside of something working better.
Maybe I'm not quite willing to grant that, though. I understand your point. It does feel great to win, and so I don't know. I don't know if I think about that more if I think that's true. I'm not. It's one of those things you said earlier, like, do you say something that's not true? I'm not sure what I think about that, but I do think you should learn from people who are growing more. And all those things. What I really think is that you shouldn't make bad financial decisions because you're feeling insecure about how big your business is. That's kind of that's what I think.
That just sounds like bad strategy.
Like I agree. But I think this is part of the whole thing. I mean, I do agree with that. Now, I think a lot of these things come back to. I think a lot of people are making those bad strategic decisions because of their insecurities.
Okay, but if you eliminate the insecurity, it doesn't create good business strategy.
It might not. Yeah, right. It might not. But what I'm saying is that the driver of these things is often not actually a thoughtful, rational business decision. It's like it's something deeper than that, and that they ought to go around that. And I just think people should feel a little bit more suspicious of the voice that's telling them some of these things.
I think if you were sitting with Elon Musk, you would say these things to him, right? And so I think there's a distinction between, are we talking about business strategy or are we talking about life strategy?
Yeah.
Because I just think you should get clear.
Barely a distinction I would make.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of the challenge is that like what you're really asking people to do is be satisfied independent of their business circumstances.
That's correct.
And it's like, okay, cool, but now can we talk about my business? So like, let's accept that. Let's grant that that's true.
Yeah.
In light of that, what should my growth rate be?
Yeah, right. Exactly. I think that's a great question, and that would change relative to the business and relative to the risk tolerance of the person offering. There's a million questions that you would get to, right? So The LTV would change my opinion of that. There's a lot of different ways I do that. And we do this all day with clients, right? We sit and try and grow their businesses. So I'm not anti-growth. I'm not at all. I'm just anti-bad financial decisions. So
that's a pivot. I'll well, we can end on agreement.
Okay, yeah.
I like
all right.
Financial.
You have to go. This is a fun one. I thought this is a really good episode.
Yeah, it's good to get a little energy into it.
Yeah. But we agreed a lot for a long time in this too.
And there's a stick around. Maybe you can cut it to the beginnings, just the hated part, and then
that's a good idea. We should make this the outro. All right, see ya. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks so much for watching or listening to another episode with me and Taylor. We try to do those as often as we can. Always fun, especially when we get to yell at each other like we did at the end there. It's just never a real Taylor conversation until we've yelled at each other. Big thanks to my sponsors in this episode. That's More Staffing, RICHPANEL, and WASTENOT. Links for all those are in the show notes. And of course, if you're interested in working with me and the team at AJF Growth, you should go to ajfgrowth.com. First of all, you should sign up for my email list. Just get my 4 free essential e-commerce resources. I'm going to send those to you right away. I literally use those tools all the time with the brands that I'm working with. Sign up in the footer, sign up in the pop-up. Either one of those will get you those. But then also tell me a little bit about your brand. Fill out the information, the intake form there. Tell me a little bit about your brand, where you're at, what you're looking for, and I'll see if I can be some help to you. Even if I can't, I might know somebody who can be, and I'm really happy to send people to other sources where that can be done. So go to ajfgrowth.com, check that out. Everything I'm doing is there all the time. And of course, you should subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast episode. You should, what else should you do? Oh, tell me what I'm wrong about. Tell me what Taylor's wrong about. Especially do that. Tell Taylor what he's wrong about in the comments on this episode. Go leave a comment. I read and interact with every one of them. So go check that out or go leave a comment there. And don't forget, like I said, to subscribe because I do have a bunch of great episodes coming up. A couple that I'm really excited about. I've got Connor McDonald coming from Ridge. I've never had Connor on the show. We're going to talk about channel diversification. When is it time to diversify your ad channel mix? I'm going to be a learner in this episode. I have some really specific questions for Connor about some content he's put out about this. I think that's going to be a big help. And then Shireen Albert is coming to talk about offers, which she has tested a lot in a lot of different kinds of brands and has really good things to say about. Always great to have Shireen on. I also just scheduled time with Drew Marconi, the CEO of Intelligems. Intelligems has been a sponsor of mine for a long time. Drew's going to come on and talk about actually how to run tests. It's not a sponsored episode, but I just have a little theory right now, partly from the conversation that I was having with Taylor in this episode, that it's probably the case that brands are basically running terrible tests all the time. And so Drew's going to help us think through testing methodology, how to test what next. It's going to be good. Subscribe. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much.